I'm back. Hi, sorry. Sorry for the internet again. So, you to be transparent, you have to have a privacy notice. So, before the customer knows or customer provides the information, or before the customer fills up the form or scans the QR code, dapat makikita nila what information will be taken from them. So, yung name nila, yung temperature nila, yung symptoms, and um, yung things na pinakita or nakikita doon sa forms, dapat sinasabi yon sa privacy notice. And then, dapat alam din nila kung bakit kinukuha. So, basically, dapat alam nila na kukunin yung information nila for contact tracing efforts. And then, they should also know if those information will be disclosed. Since it's for contact tracing, then the customer should know that it is possible that if they come in close contact with another COVID positive patient in the establishment, then their information might be given to the DOH or the DILG, as the case may be. So, for transparency, yan. So, and then, as I've mentioned, yun nga, the Joint Memorandum Circular of the DTI and the DOLE provides that you can also do contact tracing through CCTVs. So, if you do that, again, dapat alam nung employees mo or ng customers mo that you will be doing contact tracing efforts through CCTV. So, probably, if you go to establishments, kasi di ba makikita mo na may nakapost na CCTVs are watching you. So, baka kailangan natin at this time, kailangan natin lagyan na CCTVs are watching you for contact tracing. So, at least alam nila na they are being also watched for contact tracing efforts. So, but having privacy notices on CCTVs does not necessarily mean ituturo mo kung saan yung CCTVs, because it will also defeat the purpose of CCTVs. So, yun. Again, the privacy notice should be at the place where the data is collected. So, kung saan yung forms, dapat nandun. Or if it's in electronic format, dapat before the customer provides or the employee provides his or her information, dapat merong at least short description about the form, about the purpose, and kailangan din merong contact details ng data protection officer. And then, there should also be an opportunity for them, there should be a link to the full privacy notice. So, if they want a detailed discussion on the information that that would be collected from them, and how it would be used, and to whom it will be disclosed, then they should have an opportunity to see it also. So, just a rundown, the privacy notice should have the following. So, yung description of personal data, ano ba yung kinokollect na personal data from them? So, ilistan nyo lang kung ano yung nakita dun sa forms. And then, purpose. So, basically, yung purpose is contact tracing. So, yung basis for, and then, number 3 is the basis for processing. So, the basis of processing is yung issuances ng DOH, issuances ng DTI, ng DOLE. Yan. So, but basically, it's the DOH mandate for contact tracing. And then, number 4, the recipient. So, kanino ba siya i-disclose? So, it will be, again, the DOH and the DILG or any other authorized person. And then, the scope and methods of processing. So, paano ba siya gagamitin? Where will it be stored? What would be the protection measures that would be used? And how it would be disposed. So, Yun. So, and then methods for automated access and expected consequences. This would be applicable for yung electronic uh, collection of information. And then, important yung identity and um, contact details of the DPO. Kasi in case merong breach or for example, makuha ng ibang tao yung information niya, they can, the customer or the data subject can contact the DPO to complain or exercise whatever right he has over his data. And then, the retention period, so the various issuances of the DTI says that the retention period should be for a period of 30 days. So, dapat hindi na tatagal ng 30 days. So, after 30 days, it should be disposed and the customer should know that. And then lastly, the rights of the data subject and how to exercise them. So the data subject has a lot of rights. So among them is the right to access his or her data. So if ever before the 30-day period lapses, so the data subjects or the customer can ask for a copy or can ask you, the establishments, um, to see if tama ba yung data niya or um, kung uh, tama ba na nakapunta siya sa ganitong establishment. But remember that the personal that the rights of the data subjects are personal, and for example, merong ibang gustong mag-access ng data niya, it should always be with his or her consent. Unless it's the authorities, meaning the DOH or the DILG, solely for contact tracing purposes. And then for the third, so the guidelines are number one, collect only what is necessary. So kung ano yung nasa issuances ng DTI, yun lang. And then number two is to be transparent. So this would be through privacy notices. And for number three, use only for the declared purpose. So what is the declared purpose? Again, this is solely for contact tracing. So you obviously, when you get contact tracing forms, you get a lot of names and contact details of customers, right? So it's very tempting to use it for marketing purposes. So text mo siya, ma'am, meron kaming sale dito, or ma'am, gusto mong sumali sa rewards program namin. So no, it's a no-no because this effort, this collection is based solely or should be used solely for contact tracing. So, for example, si customer A pumunta sa establishment mo or sa restaurant mo, tapos ang ginawa mo after niyang fill up, so the day after, tinext mo siya na, ma'am, meron kaming buffet for this week or meron kaming promo for this week. So, obviously, ang alam niya, the collection is solely for contact tracing. But when she or he receives na yung promos, obviously hindi siya matutuwa kasi alam naman niya it's solely for contact tracing. So the next time na papasok siya sa establishment mo, sa restaurant mo, malaking chance na hindi na siya magsasabi ng totoo. So if the name is Juan de la Cruz, sasabihin niya na Pedro de la Cruz para tas ibang number na kapitbahay niya or whatever. So the chances of lying would be or dishonesty would be higher. So you wouldn't want that. So stick to the purpose. And then next is to implement security measures. So the usual method of getting information for contact tracing details is through the yung paper na i-fill up mo, and then merong drop box. So sometimes, so the drop box should not be transparent, so that na makikita ng ibang tao kung ano yung nasa loob. Kasi I've seen drop boxes na acrylic, tapos nakikita ko kung ano yung mga pangalan at contact details ng mga nasa loob. So it's not safe. Kasi kunyari, minamanmanan ako, tapos yung nasa likod ko, yung nagmamanman, pwede niyang hugutin or at least silipin niya kung ano yung contact details ko. So it would compromise naman the safety and security of the other customers. So it should ensure the confidentiality of the personal data na pinrovide ng customers mo. And then, after 30 days, so the retention period again is 30 days. So after that, the DTI circulars expressly provides that the destruction should be made in a manner that the personal data is obliterated. So dapat when you destroy it, when you destroy the forms, when you destroy the logbooks, dapat hindi na talaga makikita or hindi na mapapakinabangan or wala nang traces ng personal data sa dun sa forms or dun sa information. And then, important na yung personnel natin magkaroon ng training, capacity building. We should always, you should inculcate in them, you should always remind them not to use the data for unnecessary purpose, and that they should always protect the data that they are handling. Kasi most data breaches are happen because misinformed yung mga personnel nila. So pag nakakita sila, ay kunyari si Kim Chu pumunta dito sa sa restaurant namin. Ito alam ko na yung address ni Kim Chu. So ang gagawin niya, pipicturean niya, sasend niya sa friends niya, sa group chat, tapos kakalat na sa ibang group chat yon. So it could be a source of a personal data breach. So importante na aware yung personnel natin, how to protect the personal data of our employees and our clients. And lastly, there should be regular monitoring for data breaches. Kasi katulad nga ng sinabi ko, yung data breaches, so yung either nawawala yung personal data ng mga tao, so it's an availability breach. So or katulad ng mga acrylic na box na pwedeng makita ng ibang tao yung personal data or yung forms ng ibang tao, it could be considered as a confidentiality breach kasi merong naka-access or may nakakita ng personal data na hindi naman authorized, or integrity breach naman. So integrity breach meaning merong nag-alter dong personal data ng isang tao. Kunyari, yung kasunod ko may galit pala sa akin. Ang ginawa niya, instead na 37 or 36 yung temperature ko, ginawa niya 39. Just so ma-contact trace ako at possibly ma-isolate. So, it is always prudent to implement security measures for your contact tracing efforts. So another way to do that is through the conduct of a privacy impact assessment. Yun. So you have to list all the risks or think about all the risks that could happen in your contact tracing efforts, and then think of solutions on how to mitigate or lessen the probability of that from happening. And lastly, keep data for only a limited period. So again, the DTI circulars says that the data should only be collected for 30 days. So after 30 days, should destroy it, and then data should no longer be usable. So, hindi na talaga ma-retrieve yung data after 30 days. So, yeah. So, this is the gist of what is in the PHE bulletin of the National Privacy Commission. So, number 1, collect only what is necessary. Number 2, be transparent. Number 3, use only information only for the declared purpose. So, contact tracing only. Number 4, implement security measures. So make sure na walang ibang makakita ng personal data. And number 5, keep the data only for a limited period. So strictly for 30 days. Yan. So again, these are the forms. Employee health declaration form, client visitor contact tracing form. Yan. So these are the other issuances of the NPC with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, bulletin number 3A, so the FAQs. Number 4, protecting personal data in the time of COVID. Number 12, for the work from home arrangements. 14A, updated FAQs. And number 15, which I discussed, the guidelines in the proper handling of customer and visitor information in contact tracing. So, um, for just to remind you that the date, if you mishandle the data, you could also be held liable under the Data Privacy Act. So, merong kulong at merong fines. So, it's the range is like from 1 year to around 3 years ata, or 3 to 6 years, depending on whether it's personal information or sensitive personal information. And a fine, I think not less than 500,000 to millions. So you better protect the personal data that you handle. So one is the unauthorized processing of personal information and sensitive personal information. So for example, merong nasa tawag dito, sa tapat mo, tapos kinuha mo yung data or yung forms, tapos pinagkalat mo, then you could be liable for unauthorized processing of personal information and sensitive personal information. And then, you could also, when you access these information without, when you, for example, for yung box, use a box na acrylic or it's a very transparent box na makikita ng ibang tao, then because of that negligence or dahil sa pagtitipid na yan, you could be liable for accessing personal information and sensitive personal information due to negligence. So this is committed when, due to negligence, you provide access to personal information without being authorized. So, yan yun. Also, for improper disposal, for example, nilagay mo lang sa basurahan, tapos hindi naman nakashred, or binigay mo lang doon sa botedyaryo, and then nagamit ng ibang tao. Tapos nakarating siya doon sa data subject, doon sa customer mo. And then pwede ka nilang kasuhan for improper disposal of personal information and sensitive personal information. So it's disposing, discarding, or abandoning the personal or sensitive personal information in an area accessible to the public, or disposing it in a container for trash collection. So sa mga basurero. And then processing of personal information and sensitive personal information for unauthorized purposes. So, for example, katulad kang nakita mo na customer mo si Kim Chu, so ikaw, authorized ka naman na to handle yung forms kasi, for example, ikaw yung security guard or ikaw si HR. But, authorized ka makita. But then, yung hindi na authorized is pag-picture mo, number 1, pag-picture mo, at number 2, pag-disclose mo sa group chats mo. So, that would constitute yung processing of personal information or sensitive personal information for unauthorized purposes. And then, um, next is concealment of security breaches involving sensitive personal information. So, um, in the case of contact tracing, sensitive personal information are the sex, so male, female, and yung health information ng tao. So, for example, na-breach ka nga, so, yung forms mo ay yung katulad ni Kim Chu, yung nakalagay doon na si Kim Chu may lagnat. And then, kumalat na may lagnat si Kim Chu, that is considered already confidentiality breach, which involves sensitive personal information. When you talk about data breach involving sensitive personal information, it is mandatory that you report it to the National Privacy Commission within 72 hours. So if we do not receive it from within 72 hours or 5 days from the occurrence, it's 5 days for the full report kasi yon. So if we don't receive your report within that period, then we would presume that you are concealing your personal data breach, and you can be held liable for concealment of security breaches involving sensitive personal information. And then, for malicious disclosure, for example, you're authorized to see yung data, but kaya gusto mong siraan yung tao na, ito si ganito, meron siyang lagnat, may COVID na siya, just because high temperature. So, dinisclose mo, para siraan yung tao, then that could be considered malicious disclosure, and you could be held liable also under the Data Privacy Act. So, ito na mga unauthorized disclosure, wala lang, chismosa ka lang, pure plain chismis, tapos gusto mo lang ipagkalat, at dahil gusto lang magpasikat na, oy, eto si Kim Chu, pumunta dito sa amin, tapos nakita ko meron siyang lagnat. Yun. So, that is still punishable under the Data Privacy Act for unauthorized disclosure. And then, for example, so there are 2 or more acts na na-commit ng sabay. For example, itong si unauthorized disclosure, tsaka si dinisclose mo kasi wala lang, mema ka lang, di ba? Gusto mo lang magpasikat, and then dinisclose mo rin at wala ka ring authority to disclose, then it's processing for purposes not authorized, diba? For processing for unauthorized purposes. So if you commit 2 or more series of acts, a combination or a series of these acts, then you could be held in addition to yung the penalties. There's also a penalty for imprisonment of 3 to 6 years and a fine of not less than 1 million to 5 million pesos. So, pwede kang mag-quarantine or staycation in jail, and that because of that. So, yeah. So, take note that if the offender is a public official or employee, so tayo as government employees, we should hold our positions with high regard. So we should be honest and do it with integrity. So if we do commit those things, then we would be suffering an additional penalty or of perpetual or temporary absolute disqualification from office. So wala na tayong makukuha sa GSIS. Sayang naman. And if the personal information of at least 100 individuals or persons would be involved in that violation, then the maximum penalty in the scale of penalties will be imposed. So, for example, the scale of penalties is 3 to 6 years and the fine of 1 to 5 million, then automatic ang penalty mo would be 6 years and 5 million pesos. So that's a lot of money and that's a lot of time in jail. And lastly, when the offender is a public officer, there's also an accessory penalty of disqualification to occupy public office for a term double the term of the criminal penalty. So, for example, 6 years yon. So, 12 years kang hindi pwedeng uh, work sa government. So, for example, 50 years old ka na, nung nakomit mo yung crime, or sabihin natin 55 or 60, then sayang, hindi ka na makakabalik sa government. So, if you have questions or other concerns, especially with regards to compliance, or if ikaw naman yung um, naging biktima ng violation ng data privacy rights, you can contact us at 0282342228. The local number for the complaints and investigation division is local 114. For the compliance and registration, it's local 118. And for public assistance, it's 116 or 117. And you can email us at info@privacy.gov.ph. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much and stay safe. Back to you, Bea.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney Venenoso, for that very insightful and informative talk that you've given all of us this afternoon. Thank you so much for making us aware of our rights and the limitations of contact tracing. It gives us so much assurance that we are protected by the law while we are practicing safe contact tracing or smart contact tracing. So, Attorney, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We have learned so many things from you. So, guys, I know that we have learned so many things this afternoon, from the science of contact tracing to the technologies, the example of Baguio, and even our data privacy and how we should protect it. And at this point, in a few minutes, we will already be having our panel discussion. I know that you guys already have a lot of questions. You have a lot of things that you'd like to ask our panelists and some of our speakers. So stay tuned, because we'll be doing that in just a few. But in the meantime, we are going to be showing you a very interesting video. So guys, sit back, relax, and please watch this.